We are talking about the Peach Bowl. That is the Indiana-Oregon rematch. But it's a different version of Indiana and a different version of Oregon than when they played in Eugene back in October.
Fundamentally different for Oregon, and then we would say just at peaking Indiana. More similar Indiana, just at their best. How's that?
Yeah. Oregon was forced to change, especially offensively, what they do because they had some pretty key injuries. They lost DeCorian Moore for a while. They lost Kenyon Sadiq for a minute. They lost Gary Bryant Jr. for a while. And so they had to really find more weapons, and they did. And I think so you're going to see a little more complete Oregon attack because obviously DeCorian Moore's back. Gary Bryant Jr.'s back. Kenyon Sadiq's been back for a while. So you've got that. But to Godfrey's point, Ross, Indiana looks like the best possible version of Indiana the last couple of games we've seen them play.
Yeah, we're just talking about the accuracy of Trinidad Chambliss, and the only one that comes to mind that's been more consistently accurate, especially on the run and stuff, is Fernando Mendoza. He's been incredible, and we talked about this I think last week. Is that just look at what Indiana's done to get to this point in the teams that they've beaten, especially the last couple times out, in Ohio State and in Alabama, and they crushed Alabama obviously and beat Ohio State in a way. And Andy, I think you said this at some point during the season, like Indiana wins in just different ways and different styles, and they've proven that it doesn't matter that they can win the game if they have to rely on defense and score 20 points or 15 points. They can do that. If they can win and they have to score 40, they can do that. So, yeah, it's hard to see anybody stopping the train here with the Hoosiers. It is, but with a fully healthy Oregon, maybe that's the thing that could give them trouble.
This roster for Oregon has dudes all over the place. Like young concrete, Mateo Uiagalelei. The play he makes to steal the ball from Baron Morton and set up the first touchdown of the Orange Bowl. Not many people can make that play. I was watching it in slow-mo a few minutes ago, and that is just a superior athlete. Like with the ball in his hands, he looks completely natural. And I know he played tight end in high school. He's obviously DJ Uiagalelei's younger brother, and DJ played quarterback. But this is the level of athlete Oregon has. I mean, Kenyon Sadiq is an absolute freak. Nobody has a player like him. Then like Bryce Betcher at linebacker, two-sport star, is just a guy who can play all over the field. I love their roster, but the thing about Indiana is that the guys aren't as freaky sexy athletically, but they get it done, and they're all gonna wind up playing in the NFL. The Indiana guys and the Oregon guys.
Very Midwest. You're not as freaky sexy, but you get that job done.
You get it.
Shout out to my freaky sexy Midwest.
Yeah.
Does anyone remember how many times Dante Moore was sacked in this game the first time these teams played?
I'm actually looking it up right now.
If you want a recipe for success, you hold the opposing team to under 100 yards rushing. Oregon finished with 86. And you sack their quarterback 6 times, forcing 2 interceptions too. That's a pretty good recipe for success.
Wow.
Indiana's defense was horrific to Moore in this offense in the first game, and they still managed to get 20 points on the board. So this is where I default to different.
7 of those.
That's true. Yeah, that's right.
Pick 6.
That's right. So this is why box scores. It's like they get more deceptive with age. You start forgetting little things. Yeah, this is why I want to know how different Oregon is on offense.
That's that pick 6. I think tied the score maybe in the second half. I remember
20-20
after that play. I remember thinking, well, this is it, right? They're at Oregon, like they're back in the game, tied game. Like the Indiana is going to lose this game, and that was I remember when they just when they were coming back. I'm like scratching my head, like this doesn't compute.
They caught the kickoff and they marched it right. Or I think it was a touchback on the kickoff. 75-yard drive.
Yeah.
Fernando Mendoza didn't even look like he was sweating. That was that was the drive that should have told us stop doubting these people.
Well, no, okay. This is what I was getting at, and this is like the amnesia of sports media. I'm pretty sure that if you pull up our reaction show from that Sunday, that's exactly what we said. That this was the arrival moment. This was the arrival moment on the road to certify Indiana.
Curt Cignetti told us this was going to happen. No one believed him. We kept saying it was because of the schedule. Now, I believe all of those complaints about Indiana are dead. I think
we officially played somebody. There is no way to justify this or to take the flowers away from the Hoosiers. This is an intimidating environment, a top 5 team, yada, yada, yada. That's dead. That's done. We can stop now, right? This is maybe the second best, if not an argument for the best team in the league.
Yes, and an argument for possibly the best team in the country.
Because it's crazy now to talk about it in January of 2026, but we were all still lingering from that Notre Dame playoff debacle, right? We still weren't convinced of the legitimacy of Indiana against quality opponents. Remember that whole spiel?
Yeah.
They blew out Illinois. That was probably the most convincing win they had to date, but that wasn't going to do anything to convince people otherwise that they still weren't fraudulent because of the logo on their helmet. This was the game. This was when we decided that Indiana could be for real. Or some of us did. I guess people were still doubting before Ohio State.
Aiden Fisher was an absolute monster in this game, by the way. 13 tackles, 1.5 sacks. Like it was, and that's the thing you got to understand. Indiana has stars on its team. For whatever reason, we've not given them as much run as we have some of these guys from other teams. I mean, Aiden Fisher, one of the best players in the country. D'Angelo Pons. Trust me, D'Angelo Pons was a scary, scary dude to deal with long before he hit Ty Simpson and knocked him out of the game or knocked the ball out of his hands and ultimately knocked him out of the game. These guys have been great all along. And it's so crazy that most of their big stars were at JMU with Curt Cignetti. These were not people who were recruited heavily out of high school. These are people that Curt Cignetti ID'd and developed. And so it's interesting because they are a transfer portal team in some ways, but they are also a developmental team in a lot of ways. Oregon is kind of the perfect blend of transfer portal and developmental. And so is Miami.
I had a Big Ten fundraiser, let's call him, text me sort of like aghast and just like, I think, stunned after the Rose Bowl and said, seriously, what is it? It has to be more than the portal. But I think it's exactly what you just said. This is a portal development program. Yeah. We're talking about a coach and a staff that's really, really good at IDing talent.
It won't be portal when he's been there a couple of years,
right?
Because
although they did just land some big portal guys.
Well, I don't think they're
Josh Hoover.
Yeah. We talked about this while you were out on Sunday, Ross. Like we were trying to kind of qualify and classify ideal blueprints moving forward, like how much portal, how do you develop? Like, we went through this almost by position group, but I don't think they're ever going to stop making a splash in the portal. But also, it's here's what I think we've learned so far, and I think this is the lesson to take from Indiana. It's not how much you portal, and it's not how often. It's, are your bets in the portal correct? But bets is probably a bad sports writer term. It's a cliche. What we should be saying is like, these guys are really good at identifying talent and then developing talent. And I would also pose back to you, Andy, that maybe the reason that their stars don't get as much shine is that they are so close to that 2012, 2014 era Alabama, where it's so almost boring, like slow cooker, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have a sort of playmaker's quality. Because remember, like Julio Jones played for Alabama, and you never really saw Julio Jones moments like you did in the NFL because the system didn't dictate, he would have some catch and runs.
So what's the one moment with Indiana this year? It's Omar Cooper making that catch.
Yeah.
Against Penn State. Now, Charlie Becker had a catch that was almost as amazing on the same drive, and you saw Charlie Becker make that catch in the Rose Bowl. But, you have not seen that much of that because they haven't really needed it. But back to something Ross said about Oregon, you said Indiana being able to win games in multiple ways.
Yeah.
That's something we've seen Oregon prove it can do since they lost to Indiana. Like, both these teams are built to win a national championship because they can do that.
Yeah. I mean, look at the Iowa game, that they played, right?
Both Iowa games.
Yeah,
for these teams.
yeah, that's true. That's true. But yeah, we've seen. I mean, heck, not to discount Miami and Ole Miss, but there'd probably be a lot of people out there that would say that these two are the best teams and had the best.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the winner of this game is going to be favored in the national title game.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So
the other thing to the point about not emerging stars, I think you need stakes to develop stars. It's like the pressure builds diamonds moment. Go through and just look at, you don't have to look at the game logs, just look at the quarter by quarter box scores. Indiana just hasn't had a lot of stressful moments. I know we're coming off the Big Ten championship.
We just talked about the most stressful moment of the year after the pick six.
Yeah. And a day that I think Signetti qualified the Penn State game, not so much as a dramatic game. It's just like there was a lot of that was just a bad Indiana game. That's probably the second most dramatic thing that they've had to deal with all season. They've just been automatic. How many minutes this year, if you totaled it up, have they been playing with a lead? It's substantial compared to the other teams left in this tournament.
And just like last year, it was the same thing. Remember, it was kind of the same thing up until the end last year. It's a bit as impressive as the 2 seasons anywhere, let alone that it's coming from a historical.
The biggest difference between this year and last year, and I think everybody's now on board with the Indiana thing. I don't think we have to convince anybody anymore.
No.
But the biggest difference is their stars are just as good as everybody else's stars. Their stars are as good as Ohio State stars. Their stars are as good as Oregon stars. Their stars are as good as Alabama stars. Like, they're as good or better than those people's stars. Like, maybe they don't have a receiver who's better than Jeremiah Smith. But actually, if you go Elijah Surratt, Charlie Becker, Omar Cooper, I'm okay with that against Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. Like, that's, I can live with that. I feel pretty good about that. I'd put that receiving core up against anybody.
Andy, you mentioned the Iowa game as a sort of kind of like a bellwether evaluation because it's a similar opponent. To call back to Sunday's episode and maybe some offseason, and Ross, I'm sure you'll have some reportage here soon on this, but like, as we continue to constantly reevaluate and rejigger the playoff format, what about, like, how different do you think these teams would be viewed, or like Indiana more so than Oregon, I think, if Iowa is that last team in a playoff? You think about the quality in which that they played both of these opponents. That game is not nearly as, or it's a lot harder to discount that game if we're talking about Iowa as a playoff caliber program.
I've stopped watching Iowa against Vanderbilt. That was not my because during the season I was like, this makes me worry about Indiana and Oregon. It no longer makes me worry. It explains why they're here.
Exactly. Iowa becomes a lot more respectable of a crucible for these Big Ten teams to survive, especially when you go there and you have to do the shtick we always talk about where you kind of have to become Iowa to beat Iowa. But I just think the merit and value of that team, I feel like I've misevaluated the program, especially the last 3 or 4 years, as kind of this gimmicky, like Ferentz is long in the tooth and they're never going to innovate on offense.
If they get the right QB, they're making the playoff.
But like, look at these raw game results. And this is kind of dawning on me in real time. Like, this is a mandate on how we're evaluating some of these playoff teams. And I know there's a lot of, it's not just comparative analysis and recency bias and this kind of stuff, but like when you factor in the complete obliteration of Alabama by Indiana, and then looking at Iowa's sort of data that they put up against these last 2 teams in the Final Four, I think we're doing something wrong here. I think we are shortchanging the middle class of the Big Ten.
Yeah, I was just about to say maybe the big class's middle is not as bad as we all thought, right?
I think. Yeah, I would agree with that. And in Iowa especially, I think we should be looking at Iowa as a team that should have been considered. I mean, obviously, they lost to Iowa State. They had 4 losses, but if they could have beaten USC, there would have been probably a legitimate case to be made for them at 9-3 to be considered, just like Texas, just in that bucket.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm getting at here, guys, is I don't know they would have been. I don't know if they beat out, like they would have been at 9-3 more deserving of the bid than Alabama having recently played in the SEC championship. But we all know that's not going to happen. We've turned Atlanta into an auto bid for 2 teams, and maybe it shouldn't be.
No, this game is going to be fascinating though. I can't wait. It's another coin flip, just like we said about the first game. And I realize Indiana won the first one. It is really hard to discount that might have been a bad Indiana game, Godfrey, just like you just said.
Yeah.
And if it was, then we got something to talk about. But I also think Oregon's better than when they played. I think Oregon's learned about itself in the process here.